comfy?
Uh,
Just make yourself comfy.
looks like you're the host, honey, so you've got to hit record. I can't do it.
I already did.
Hey, we're recording. Here we are on the underworld, the unexplained. I'm Paul Whitcomb, and I'm here with the lovely TJ Abel. And we have some special guests today. The first being the distinguished, handsome, and very suave Carl Johnson, who's been with us before. Good afternoon, Carl.
Oh, gosh, you're having me blushing. Good afternoon to you, Paul and TJ. Glad to be back. My second time with you.
It's so good to have you again. We had the most fascinating podcast with you a couple of weeks ago and had really good feedback on that. And the lovely lady next to you is Elise Giammarco Carlson. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit, Carl, can you tell us a little bit about your co-guest?
Yes, well, this is the president of the Johnston Historical Society, the town of Johnston, Rhode Island. She curates a small, but splendidly arrayed museum, and she's a cemetery conservator. So she doesn't mind getting down and dirty and moving headstones around. That's what she does, you know? And of course, she is a paranormal enthusiast, and that's how we started talking originally. And she is the co-founder of a team of two called Panorama Paranormal. By panorama, it means like eclectic, expansive, you know. It's so we're not limited to ghost hunting. So that's her in a nutshell. We are actually coming to you from the Johnston Historical Society headquarters. We can say that, can't we?
Sure.
It's too late now.
Hence the mess in the background.
Yeah. Well, it looks like an office because that's
that was an
essentially
open
what it is.
investigations.
Oh, yes. And she's researching a cold case, a murder from 1915, and she's doing, now that is extensive research. It really
That's
is.
cold. I mean, that's really
Yeah.
cold.
It's really
1915.
Yeah, she's going to start getting messages in her mailbox. Stop, quit now, you know. But it was a judge who was murdered in the town of Johnston, Rhode Island. It was the permutations are just fascinating, and the more she researches, she finds a story behind a story, and it's really growing. So I think
Fascinating.
it should be televised.
I can wait for
really.
the book.
You wait for the book. Yeah.
We'll have you on and
There you
we'll
go.
definitely promote your book. We love doing that.
Hmm.
We have all kinds of authors. We had a great time with Carl's book last time.
Oh, yes.
We would love to
I
help
kept holding it
promote
up.
yours. You know what really interests me, Elise? Carl told me that you are a bit of a skeptic or a realist.
A realist is the term that I
Yeah.
use. Stop looking at me like
So,
that.
yeah, so
Or
I'm
is
really
he like-
curious as to what that means.
Well,
from
if you
this
ask him, it means killjoy.
She spoils the party. TJ creates the party. She spoils it.
People will send him a photo and say, look, I captured a ghost. And I'll take one look at it and say, it's wearing lace, but it's a tablecloth. And that's a plant. That's not hair.
Yeah. You did that just last week, as a matter of fact.
I
Yeah.
do that a lot.
But she's very quick to ascertain and see what what
I
really
haven't been at
designates
this
it.
for as long as a lot of these people that you probably talk to. I saw my first ghost when I was 4 years old. I didn't have anything like that. I just grew up watching a lot of shows that the unexplained and, In Search of with Leonard Nimoy and, unsolved mysteries. I always loved things like that. And then one day as an adult, I'm sitting there watching TV. My kids are grown off to college. And I thought, why am I watching these people do this? I should be doing this. And it happened to be around the same time he came to give a talk at my historical society about Slater Mill. And the president of the historical society at the time said, hey, you're going to hit it off with this guy. He likes all those demons and stuff that you like.
That was
Literally what he said. And so I come at it like as somebody who raised a couple of kids and had a career and, you show me something, I'm automatically going to look for, why is this really happening? You hear voices. Are there voices talking to you? Or are you just hearing them? Is it a
Right.
psychological? There's a million reasons why things happen. I'm not saying there's not something out there that here or there or different things happening that can't be identified, have not yet been identified. And I would love to be the one to identify them, but I'm not automatically going to jump to that.
So you start with a materialistic explanation.
Of course.
Mhm.
Of course.
You know what that really makes me want to ask you is, can you think of any investigations you and Carl have done together where you've just said, that's not a tablecloth or that's not a plant. I have no idea what that is.
Actually, I had found a small cassette recorder up here at the Historical Society. They used to use years ago for interviewing people in town. And I said, wow, this would make a nice little recorder for us to use, because I never got EVPs at all. We had a gentleman that called us and said that he was pestered by a voice that kept telling him that he was no good and he should just do himself in. So we went over there and we spoke to him a couple of times. And the second time we went over there, very nice people. We spoke, you know, he did have some problems, personal problems, career problems, a troubled individual who was on his way back, actually became a counselor for other people. So, you know, he's very hopeful, very upbeat guy. So we went to talk to him one day, and they had a big couch, a corner couch. So we were all pretty far apart from each other. Carl and I were on one couch, he was with his wife on the other. And they were telling stories and trying to find evidence that they had, you know, collected some pictures. They were flipping through papers. So I said, do you mind if I leave my recorder running while we talk? And he said, no, not at all. I said, you know, I'm not trying to justify what you say and say you said this. I'm just looking for any background noises. And I went home that day, listened to the cassette, and I hear a voice swearing at him. And the voice was, there was a voice up close into the recorder saying, what, I forgot what that one says, like, go F yourself, or basically.
Give up, go F yourself.
A very gruff voice close to it, half whispering. And that was no one in that room talking.
Called him a son of a bee, you know, like that.
And there were a couple of phrases that came out, and it never happened again talking to them. But I had never picked up anything like that ever.
So this is someone we figured had a psychological malady. He's hearing the voices, you know, the voices are telling him he's no good, he's worthless. And she listened to a recording and we hear the voice too. It was real.
Yeah, I cannot explain that.
I mean, so what does that lead you to think, Elise? What is your conclusion from this?
I really don't know. I mean, we're lucky in that, like I said, this gentleman was very upbeat, had gone to counseling and, you know, was in drug rehab and whatnot, because he had just spiraled downward with a bunch of different problems. And so we're lucky that we really didn't have to refer him to anyone or anyone to him, thinking that, you know, he was in danger from himself. I don't know what I would have done if he had, because now he says he's just learned to live with hearing this and he knows differently. So he has conversations with the voice, which, as long as they're positive conversations, what can you do?
Supposedly they have other phenomena going on in their house too.
Right. That was originally why we went over there. Balls rolling around, things falling off of shelves. But I mean, I really don't know what sort of, I mean, I've read since on different theories of what could possibly be causing EVPs. I've been taking a class in parapsychology, which says that some people are able to imprint electronic devices with, you know, photographs or voices, you know, you can, aura photography, could be a form of psychokinesis, where this voice comes out. Like hearing dogs when you talk.
It just so happens.
Right.
I really, you know, I don't know. I just enjoy trying to figure it out.
So that time that happened to you, all of a sudden you've got something you can't explain. Did that change your approach to this at all?
Not really. I just kept bringing my recorder everywhere. Now I haven't gotten anything since. Nothing like that. So, I mean, you know, everyone says they're trying to prove things scientifically. What's number one? Replication. Right. I haven't had it happen again. So.
But you have no doubt about the fact that this was not some kind of a trick or anything.
No, that was a brand new tape. The four of us were just sitting there having a conversation, just as we had been. And it's not even, I didn't tell them I was going to record until I pulled it out of my pocket and said, oh yeah, I brought my recorder. Do you mind? And they said no. And, you know, it was a total surprise to them. I don't know. That wasn't his voice. Wasn't her voice. And it was no one else home.
Do you want to tell these people the time you were attacked by a ruler? A yardstick went after you? Do you want to tell them that?
It was just a 12-inch ruler. It wasn't.
Oh, okay. It was a ruler that attacked you.
Do you want to hear that story?
Very much so. Were you a student of the Catholic school?
Not even.
They were just floating around.
This was actually one of the first times I'd gone out with a group investigating. It was a public investigation. We have a nice group in Rhode Island that does fundraisers for historical societies. They'll have a ghost hunt at their place, take a bunch of people around that have never done this before, and everyone has a good time. Sometimes they come up with evidence. So it was a very hot night. There were a group of us, And we walked around this house, talking to closets and whatever else you do in a public ghost hunt. And it was very warm. And this guy, Ken, said, I want everyone downstairs, cool off, get a drink, regroup. There was a room air conditioner in one room. He said, go cool off. So as we sat around, it was very noisy, the window air conditioner. So nobody had a recording thing going, of course. A woman got the idea to read the names of all the people who had lived in the house before that. Mr. Arnold, are you here? Mr. Brown, are you here? We're just sitting and listening to her. And she got to Mr. Westcott, are you here? And the Westcotts had owned a sawmill in the neighborhood. And some of the family members had lived in that house. And one of the displays that they had were Westcott rulers. They used to make the wooden rulers. They made pencils, all kinds of things. So the display was a wrought iron easel with a piece of cardboard on it with a bunch of rulers taped to it, which I thought was kind of silly. I had looked at it earlier. I'm like, well, that's awful heavy duty for a piece of cardboard, flimsy cardboard at that. And I didn't realize I had situated myself in front of that easel when we sat down to cool off and chat. And when she said, Mr. Westcott, are you here? The easel tipped forward and landed on my head. It was very heavy.
Ouch.
And I know it was leaning backwards. It was an actual wrought iron easel.
So it was leaning backwards and it
So-
came this way toward you.
I had 10 very amazed people just looking at me going, what the hell just happened? I'm like, I don't know, but could you get it off me?
Yeah. Right when they
Not
said
the kind of thing an air
Westcott.
conditioner could move.
And the best proof was, my sister was with me. So, if your sister will stick up for you and not say it, you're full of crap, it really happened.
Hmm.
So that
That's
was
really
Elise-
interesting.
Elise, you have an interesting past. You've got a lot of other talents. You were a police officer, and do you want to tell
No,
us
I
about
was
all your stuff?
I was a 911 operator.
911 operator. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you practice. Was it taekwondo?
It was a mixed martial arts.
Mixed martial arts. Okay.
I like to
okay.
say I can kill a man in 5 languages, but I haven't had to yet. And I like to do a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Took some time out. The kids are growing up, learn some new skills. They're actually the ones who get me involved in most of the things that I do. But I think that comes in handy. I know a little bit about everything. Not really an expert on anything, but I know when I walk into a house what a heating system sounds like, or the plumbing.
Right.
Or,
That's a useful skill to have as
just-
a paranormal investigator
yeah.
because
I'm the person in my house that fixes everything. So,
Right.
and we have a staircase here that people, I like to play jokes on them and, tell them it's a haunted staircase, because I know 20 minutes after someone walks up the stairs, it's going to start sounding like someone walked up the stairs. But I never
Right.
say that to anybody that comes to visit. I just let them hear the steps, and I'm like, did you hear somebody coming up the stairs? And they're like, yeah. Oh, that's just the ghost. And you can just see them like, what?
it really does sound like that. But it's got this, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Plus, there's knocking, sometimes very mysterious knocking on the door downstairs, and that's what's that?
It's the stupid woodpecker.
Yeah.
It kept knocking in threes too. I was sitting here like, wow, I think I got something this time. And I look outside and I'm like, oh, come on.
Mm. Yeah, so generally you're the one to debunk. In fact,
That's why I said-
we've been to that house. She's doing research on what's called the Conjuring house in Harrisville, Rhode Island, Round Top Farm. And it is a haunted house. There is genuine activity. We know that. We've heard too many eyewitness accounts. I've experienced it there. However, people do grasp at straws. They want to be surprised, excited, scared a little. And boy, you're really a party pooper there. You pull the rug out there.
Well, I'm just amazed that the stories that were going around, like through the movie,
The
and,
Conjuring.
the movie The Conjuring,
Mhm.
that these people still believe these stories, like about Bathsheba. Bathsheba is the witch that supposedly haunts the house, and she's, her head's coming off. And no, Bathsheba was a neighbor, and she didn't kill any babies with a pin in her, by sticking a pin in their head. I've looked into her family. The hardest thing to prove about somebody is that they did nothing. And especially a woman that was just a normal, like I like to say, a normal God-fearing woman that did her work every day, lived and had children and died, basically. It's not going to be written in any book that she was not a witch. There aren't any references to her being a witch, but nobody wants to hear that. And also the
So,
stories about,
do you think that anything is going on in this house, or are you skeptical about this house yourself?
I'm skeptical that there's anything going on. The only thing I can say that I really find so fascinating about the house, other than it's 1736 and it's fantastic, is how quiet it is in there. You're in one room, you can't hear a person in the next room, and nothing seems to echo. It's just, I've been fortunate to be able to spend time alone there. Not totally alone, but it seems like I am. Other people, like say we'll visit with someone who's come to see the house, and he'll take off and show them the house, and I'll sit there by myself. I don't even know where they are. I can't hear them. That's odd for an old house because the walls weren't really made that thickly. They're just, it's a regular old house. So I find that fascinating. In that, when I read Andrea's books, she did mention portals and bubbles where people couldn't hear each other. I wouldn't go that far, but there is something strange about the sound in the house.
Well, we have an old Victorian house that is like that as well, though. You can't hear through the walls at all, almost. If you're in one part of the house, you don't hear anything else.
Yeah.
And I hope that's not because it's haunted. I don't know.
No. This is a very early house that, was built way outside what was considered, it's like 7 miles from Providence. It was considered, way outside of civilization at the time. They went out to live with the Indians basically in 1736. That was wild country out there. So it wasn't a solidly built house by a builder. It was built by farmers and,
What about the 7 soldiers that are supposed to be buried on the grounds in the wall? Or I think it's supposed to be the wall there and 7 bodies, but it's never, that's folklore there. It's never been confirmed.
We've just had a recent, it shows how people play telephone. They like game telephone where the facts change as things go along. It was always 7 soldiers in the wall. And now someone just suggested, maybe they didn't understand. Maybe it was 7 soldiers in the well. So now everybody's looking for bodies in the well. All it takes is one person to suggest something and an entire story is going to change. There was a story about, you probably heard the old story about the old woman who hanged herself in the barn. Mrs. John Smith, Arnold, hanged herself in the barn, 90 years old. Wow, who does that? Because she didn't. There was a Mrs. John Smith who died down the street who hanged herself in her upstairs room from a cupboard door. She was 55. There was a Mrs. John Smith who was 90 years old who died, who lived in the neighborhood. She died because she was old. And there was one more. I can't remember who now. There was a third Mrs. John Arnold. The last name is Arnold, not Smith. But, 3 women who had the same,
3 women, yes,
known as Mrs. John Arnold, died in different ways. All of their details got wrapped up together into this one story about a 90-year-old woman who hanged herself in a barn. And it didn't happen that way.
So a lot of the mythology about it is just that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would assume, Carl, that you feel differently about this.
Actually, I very much concur with Elise on all of this. I know there's, like these myths become propagated and people so want to believe that it's, there's this terrible haunting there. Oh, it is a haunted house. And I don't think you need to fabricate or exaggerate at all to accept it as, an interesting place. But no, I don't think this Bathsheba personage, who was blown all out of proportion with the book and then the successive movie. No, she was just a woman who was there, lived in the neighborhood. But she's become the lodestone for this haunting. She has the interesting name, Bathsheba, Bathsheba Sherman, and so the myth actually becomes greater than the reality at the time. I grew up in a haunted house. My parents' house was just as haunted as that was. Sporadically, most days were business as usual. But that grew into a claim because of the visitation by the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine Warren. And then, of course, the movie was produced 40 years later. So that's how it got such a reputation.
But you do think it is a haunted house?
Oh, yes, I do. I do because, back in, I don't know, how old were you in 1973, Paul? What were you doing? You weren't practicing then.
Wasn't practicing then.
No,
I was 8.
you were 8, so you couldn't have even come with me. I would have, yeah,
I had to ride my bike.
yeah, I would have to get a pass for you to get there. In August 1973, my first visitation to this house on Round Top Farm, I went up the stairs. I heard some commotion up there, like as if the Perrin family had guests. And I saw a black, it wasn't even a form, a blackness issuing down the hallway towards me. My first thought that there was a fire in the house. It was smoke and I was going to smell smoke, but it dissipated. It didn't even fade away, it just gone. And so I've seen that. I've seen furniture move around there. I've heard numerous bangs on the walls. And a remarkable incident I had was just June of last year when the Heinzens, Jen and Corey Heinzen, had just had the closing on the house the day before. And they invited me to come up there. And of course, I brought the lovely Elise, and that's how they got to know each other. And I was looking at a mirror, a rectangular mirror in the parlor, what used to be a kitchen. And I said, by gum, that's the same mirror the parents had. It looks like the same one. And then the next owner, Norma Sutcliffe, kept that mirror. I said, well, it looks like it's in the same place. So I went up to look at it. And I saw myself as I appeared when I was 18 years of age. I mean, my reflection was moving with me and I had my red polo shirt on, but I had this long reddish blonde hair and I just looked younger, much younger. And I started to say, Elise, but I had a feeling that as soon as she came in there, it wouldn't be anything odd anymore. I was just looking at myself younger. I enjoyed that it was about a minute and a half. I wish you could have seen it because I told you I was handsome. And, that would have vindicated me right there, if you had seen that. But I just had a feeling that when Elise came in, it would be a normal reflection. Eventually, I moved away. I said, well, I got to let this go. Boy, what an experience it was when I saw myself in the bathroom mirror, this brightly lit, it's like, okay, now I got to see one end of the spectrum and the other and how things changed. And I wish I could have kept that magic mirror on the wall.
And now whenever I visit, I stare into that mirror, but
Nothing, huh?
nothing happens.
No. Although Mike Ricksecker, a paranormal investigator, he came to visit us 5 weeks ago, and he saw some kind of distortion in that mirror. It was making his face look different, like it's morphing into something. So there's some strange property to that mirror, But that's the only time that's happened to me. Well, I've looked at all kinds of weather conditions outside, and I just didn't replicate the same effect. So that was odd. But things do happen there, yes. And I'm sure the parents say, were telling a true story when they told about the hauntings in their house. Sure. And tomorrow night is the anniversary of that seance that went very wrong. Had a seance on October 30th, 1973, and the Warrens were present, the paranormal people, and they had a priest there. And it was supposed to be a seance to contact whatever presence there was in the house. I thought it ill-advised. I wasn't invited to it. And at one point, Mrs. Carolyn Perrin was taken over. Supposedly, they say she was speaking in a different voice. And I know this is true because enough people have corroborated it. Her body was flung out of her chair about 13 feet away into the next room. And she was unconscious on the floor. They just flew out of her chair. And Roger, her husband, he had objected to the seance, but they were already preparing for it when he got home. So he let it go on. And so Carolyn's body is thrown out of her chair. And Roger went to help his wife. Honestly, they thought she had died. And Ed Warren stood in his way and said, "You must never touch the possessed." And that was a mistake because Roger slugged him, and there was this, and ordered everybody out of the house, and that was the end of their association with paranormal investigating teams. Ours was the first. I was a member of a group based at Rhode Island College in Providence, and we were invited by Carolyn Perrin to explore their house and try to give them an evaluation of what was happening there. So we had what I thought was a productive and scientifically based investigation. We visited them twice, and the third time we came back with the Warrens, whom I knew. Ed Warren had volunteered for them to come over and investigate the house. But the Warrens' time there was not an investigation, it was an intercession. So they were trying to rid them of the demon witch Bathsheba, which I never agreed with. So that was actually totally how the Warrens became involved with the Perrins situation.
What I would like to find out is what Elisa said, she's not sure about this house, but you think it's haunted, but you've got some very interesting ideas about the genesis of these spiritual, or maybe they're not spiritual forces. What are your thoughts about the genesis of whatever is going on at that house?
I think he's talking to you. I think he wants your take on that.
I couldn't tell you. I mean, some people say, oh, an old house, a lot of people died in the house and their spirits are still floating around in there. A lot of people have died everywhere throughout the town, throughout the state, throughout the country. Are there ghosts floating around everywhere? That's what a lot of people are trying to find out.
I think there are a lot of factors involved, really, myself. I mean, my theory is that personalities are absorbed by the house. They're kind of embedded into the structure, the fabric of the building. And it's like a recording that gets replayed. And they actually take on an intelligence and a responsiveness of their own. So it's not so much that the house is haunted by ghosts. I think the house is the haunting. And sometimes under special conditions, those are replayed. It might have something to do with the lime content in the soil, the long history of the house, 1736, as Elise said. So there are reasons for it. We just know it occurs there. Why it doesn't happen in every old house, don't know. Something to do with the way it's situated. The house was there during it was shortly after King Philip's War, but there was still hostility. There was still hostility with the Native Americans. So for whatever factors, yes, that the life of the house keeps repeating itself. And I think that's what this black form is that I saw, a black thing. Interestingly, Corey Heinzen's son, Kyler, 46 years later, when they first came into that house, he saw the same thing I had seen, that blackness moving around upstairs. And he didn't know my story at the time. So he saw that. Other people have seen it. What causes it? We don't know. It seems to be like a rift in the dimensional fabric. I don't think it's malevolent, nothing evil about it. It is just there. But it's been filmed, it's been documented.
I wonder if you think that quantum physics could have some role in explaining this.
Exactly. Quantum physics, of course, is highly speculative, but it gives you a premise. So through some projection, that's why I say, but actually that is quantum theory, that personalities and events can be imprinted into physical objects, and something triggers them, a trigger object. I think the house is a trigger object, and then they manifest, they're replayed. And they're not just residual or atmospheric haunts. These beings are aware of us, the ghost, and we're the ghost of them. Carolyn Perrin had an experience, which I believe, because of my mirror experience, in that same room, Carolyn turned around and saw men seated at a table, and they were in vintage antique clothing. They were looked like from the 1700s, and they had pewter tankards. And these two figures looked at Mrs. Perrin, and she looked at them, and they looked startled. So to these people in the 18th or 17th century, Carolyn Perrin was the ghost. She was the apparition. They were the ghost of her, and then they just vanished. So I think there are rifts in this time frame. It's a time displacement, really. So without getting
then are they actually conscious beings, or are they more like echoes?
That's the big dunno, D-U-N-N-O.
Right. They're living their life at the same time that the people who are here living their life, like in a parallel world where they just happen to cross once in a while. They have a hole where they can look into each other. There are a million theories.
I think they are aware. They have an effervescent awareness, a cognizance, but they are not. They don't have the same sense of time. It's not like, hey, I've been a ghost for a long time now. How about you, John? Yeah, it's been a long time. When are we going to move on? I don't think it's anything like that. They believe they are living. They're in their own reality, and it's replayed. It's looped again and again. And maybe they change a little bit each time they are replayed. Maybe they get, garner a little more awareness of their condition. But
if it's that, there was one specific example I came up with for Heinzens that live there now and the Perrins that lived there then. The supposition, what they came up with was that most of the violent activity was against Carolyn, whereas Roger would just feel hands give him a back rub. So the story they came up with was that she was in love with whoever this ghost was, they called Bathsheba, was in love with Roger and wanted to get rid of Carolyn. So, I mean, it made for a good story.
It's like
So
a very nice metaphysical soap opera.
Well, if this was something that was supposedly going to replay itself, the Heinzens are a lovely couple. And, you know, why isn't there some ghost that's trying to get with Corey and get rid of Jen? I've asked her, you know, I said, is anybody after your husband, living or dead? And she just laughed. She's like, no, we haven't had anything like that happen.
It's interesting that, you know, the current homeowners, Jennifer Heinzen, looked quite a bit like Carolyn Perrin, the one when I first went there in 1973. They're lookalikes.
Small, attractive. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. So the ghost has a type.
But they haven't had that kind of activity. Nobody's rubbing Corey's shoulders, I guess, besides Jen.
Yeah. And, you know, whereas Corey Heinzen is a, you know, tall, rugged guy, and, you know, almost heavy set, but, you know, rugged and bearded and all that. Looks like Paul. Yeah. You know? No, well, yeah, he's his own look, you know. But yeah, they're a very congenial couple and all that.
Right, and they just feel like the kinds of people that you can trust. They not, you know, I know some loopy people that they told me they went and bought a haunted house. I'd say, well, of course you did, you know. You know, here comes Corey the Marine with his Purple Heart, and, you know, I mean, this guy is just like no nonsense, tough. And for him to say, "Ooh, that was spooky," you're like, "What?"
He gets, yeah, he
You
gets
know,
a little
I just-
discombobulated there.
You know, that anything could not scare him. He's not scared at all, but you know, just
He gets a little
make
unsettled.
him question and get unsettled is, you know, it's like, wow.
Didn't they all stay in the same room in their son, like the first
When they
month
first
they were
got
there?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So like downstairs in the living room or something?
Yeah.
Very much like that,
Some of them
yeah.
now called the safe room.
Safe
Well,
room.
that-
It just sounds scarier.
It really does.
Yeah.
So other than the Conjuring house, what have you seen there that is a location that holds a lot of interest for the two of you?
Well, that would be where I was employed for 14 years, was historic Slater Mill site in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. If you guys visit, I wish I could bring you there. I can, but I can't bring you inside anymore because that has been acquired by the National Park Services. And with the COVID restrictions, we can't presently enter the buildings. But that site was thoroughly haunted. Again, it was a setting where many days or most days were business as usual, but things did happen there. I had 14 years of experience there. I've seen objects, antiques move around, you know, and old furniture. I've seen a shadow person there, heard a little girl's voice in the old house. There's a house that was built in 1758 on the grounds, and that has a little girl in it, and she's been seen looking out the windows. She's been recorded. Oh, I mean, they know she's there. And Elise had the, I guess, privilege to investigate there with me and assist me with the ghost hunts. I started a ghost hunting program there, and the ghost did not disappoint. We always got something. Recordings, EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena, where disembodied voices are imprinted into an audio recording. Some bizarre photographs. I still have some of them. I wish everybody who said they were going to send me their photographs did that, you know. There's a little boy ghost in Slater Mill proper, which is, you know, restored as a museum. The old house in the grounds, the 1758 Sylvanus Brown house, that has the little girl, Becca. We call her Becca because that name is 6 people recorded. Just different people recorded the name Becca on their audio recordings. And in the stone mill, with its 3-foot thick rubble stone walls, there's a shadow person. It's a form of ghost that just doesn't make any sense. It looks like a person, except it's in shadow. Shows up behind you, to the side of you, you turn around. Sometimes you're still seeing it. Many people, I've seen it. I've seen the shadow ghost there 3 times. And that was remarkable experiences. I could spend the whole show just talking about Slater Mill and my
When you
lovely
talk
assistant.
about ghosts or spirits or
Yeah.
leftover energy repeating itself or imprinting itself on the stonework of the mill or whatnot, Slater Mill was known for child labor before the child labor laws. They had very small children in there working barefoot that would run under humongous spinning machines to either untangle threads or add a new yarn to a spindle or whatnot. There were a lot of accidents. There are no good records on how many children were even killed in there. If you see these machines in person and hear them running, and it's just, you know, he'd start up one just for the tour. And to imagine this entire mill with these huge machines running with a big water wheel running underneath, little barefoot children working 8 to 10 hours a day because they thought they had a great job because they weren't on the farm anymore. That is a lot of psychic energy going on that, you know, if you believe that that's what the problem is, you've got a lot of emotion and a lot of pain and a lot of,
And you talk about an
psychic
old
energy
structure.
going on
Slater
there.
Mill was constructed in 1793.
Ooh.
Oh, excuse me a minute.
I
You want to take care of that?
yeah,
Okay.
you what?
Okay, come back when you can.
All right, I'll be right
I'm going
back.
to take the comm for a while because she is president of Johnston Historical Society, and we had a guest come in just now. So she's got to greet them, but she'll probably be back before we're done.
You know what I would like to suggest, Carl, is
What would
we
you
just
like to
do a
suggest?
show on the Slater Mill. I mean, it sounds fascinating.
Oh, my word. I have pictures to show you, and I should have a DVD around that I could insert to show you some of the haunting. And, you know, I mean, I could give you an hour show right now just talking about it, but I would like that. I mean,
What do you think
the
about
place
that,
does
TJ,
exist.
if we did a show just on the mill?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Because it sounds really interesting.
Oh, it is. It always had my attention. I miss it. I miss it dearly. The last time I worked there was Friday the 13th, Friday the 13th, 2020. And then on the 15th, we got the word that it was closing, you know, and that was it. And the locks were changed and all that. Fortunately, I didn't leave any belongings there. But yeah, that was very much a part of my life. I mean, while I was working at Slater Mill, my mother, you know, passed away that time, last October, beginning of October. You know, I lost somebody very dear to me, my fiance of the time. I had a lot of good things happen to me during that time, but 14 years, you know, and of course I was working there and got terrible news and got good news while I was working at Slater Mill. So it was something. And I remember my first tour I gave there of a school group, you know, because we had the school classes on the field trips come through. And at the time I was featured in Ghost Hunters on the Sci-Fi Channel on television. So we're giving this tour, and all of a sudden a little boy came up to me. You know, we're touring the 3 buildings. Little boy comes up to me and says, "Mister, you're famous. You're a ghost hunter." So I spent 20 minutes signing autographs, and I said, "Oh, they're wondering who they hired now." Oh, here's Elise again. Now she's taller than I. Yeah,
That's quite all right. Little variety is good. Some different angles.
yes. Paul's suggesting doing a show on Slater Mill, and you could contribute to that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be great. I would love to plan that. We try and keep the show somewhere from 45 minutes to an hour because people's attention spans are just not what they used to be.
Right.
You know, and we have found that we can talk forever with Carl, and we've continued talking even after the show was over. We're still
Yeah.
talking with
We
Carl,
do, yeah.
That's not a surprise.
and we find it really interesting. But
Well, I bring very interesting guests too, you know, for you.
Yeah.
For you.
absolutely. But we should probably cut it off for now so that we have
This would be good
something we
timing.
can put
Yes.
up on YouTube that
Yeah.
people will watch. And what I'd like to do is if you two are willing, I'd love to do a show just on the Slater Mill and everything you two know
Yes.
about that.
May I bring her in on that because she's been
Oh,
there a
yes.
number of times.
Actually, we were
Yes.
going to suggest that she bring you, Carl.
My computer.
That'll work out. That'll work out.
Yeah, and we can actually, email you some pictures that you can show while we're talking. He's got some old pictures and pictures of ghosts in
Yeah,
Slater Mill.
but I believe are genuine
If
pictures
you'd
of
like
ghosts.
to, show those while we're chatting. we can do
Love
something
That would be
to.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, the sooner we can work that out, the better. And I'll leave that to TJ and Carl. They were able to schedule this despite our horrible schedules. And it's been just a pleasure, Elise,
yes,
to get
ours.
to know you a bit, and Carl to talk to you again. Just wonderful. I thank you so much, both
Been a
of you,
lot of
for your
fun.
time, and look
Has
forward
been.
to another chance.
This is the fun show. Done.
Great. Thank you both for
Good.
coming on today, and we'll
Thank
see
you.
you
Nice
soon.
meeting you.
Nice
Keep in touch
meeting
and I will
you.
listen. Yeah.
All right,
I'm
we'll
gonna
talk to you
visit
guys
Dunks.
again very quickly soon.
Okay. Yeah.